I am very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Fine, fine. Been a while.
Yes, it's been a long time, but I hope you're doing
very well,
well.
very well. Been doing well, and in fact, I finished my doctorate just the other day.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, time flies, you know.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
congratulations.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
You know, I'm always looking up to my professors.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you, thank you.
So what is it in?
It's on law. So
okay.
Yes, so just a bit of a change, because you see I did BCom, but anyway. I'm always looking up to my professors. Law. Sorry?
I didn't realize you read law.
No, the thing is just a change, because for masters I fell in love with law, and you know, I did a bit of auditing, and then anyway I just decided to move on with law.
Oh, well done. Very well
thank
done.
You very
Congratulations.
Much. Thank you. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going just to introduce you a bit, as you know, as the boys come in, and then we move on. So anyway, guys, welcome. I've just been talking to Dr. Beatrice Njeru. She's my professor, and she's always been my professor. So she's a doctoral graduate from Daystar University, and also the founder of Strathmore Writing Center, and a lecturer there as well in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. She's passionate about communication, and her research sought to find out how communication constituted and builds the Kenyan Chama, an informal corporate society that is mainly used to pool and invest savings. Her qualitative findings help shed light on how small-scale organizations work in an African setting, highlighting social activities not as soft, negligible issues, but are key factors to be considered. The findings touched on kingship, spirituality, and communal sharing of food as examples of issues that are often overlooked but are of importance in the African context. Besides that, Dr. Beatrice sits in the School of Humanities Research Committee and is a fellow of Higher Education Academy in the UK. Today, Dr. Beatrice is going to talk to us about, or rather, give us ideas on being a gentleman. So without much ado, I'm going to allow Dr. Beatrice to tell us, and then along the way, I'll ask you a few questions. The boys always, you know, write to me the questions, and then I read them out. That helps us save a bit of time. And then, and then I guess, if you don't mind, we can start.
Thank you. That's a very kind introduction. At some point, I kept wondering who you're talking about. It's amazing. It's a very kind introduction, and I'm really grateful. And thank you for the invite to talk about this topic.
Okay, anytime.
I must tell on you, and I must tell them that one of the things that I did was to completely resist the idea that I, a woman, could talk about what it is like to be a man. I mean, I felt I really didn't have any kind of moral authority to talk about this. But I thought about it of course, he's extremely persuasive. I mean, by now you know that. But as I thought about it, then I thought to myself, you see, we're always recipients of other people's behavior. You're not the recipient of your own behavior. You know, for example, I am a mother to a teenage boy. I am not my own mother. I am a mother to a teenage boy. And so that boy can discuss and describe what it is like to have a good mother and what he thinks a good mother is all about. And I think in the same way, I feel I have the moral authority to discuss what it is to be a gentleman, because I am a recipient of gentlemanly behavior, if we could create that word. I receive behavior from others that causes me to see, or I observe behavior from others that causes me to think, oh, that's quite a gentleman. I mean, how gentle of him to do that. So as I speak about this, I'm therefore not speaking from a pedestal, from an expert point of view, but I'm speaking from an observer and a recipient's point of view, because as I said, I have been a recipient of gentlemanly behavior. The way I'm going to organize this, that I will request that at some point that we get into a discussion, depending on how many we will be. But before then, I'm going to let you in on something that has been fascinating me for the past few months. I don't know when was the last time that you saw a compost pit? A compost pit to make compost, like, you know, to take all the waste from the house and really create manure from it. I don't know if any of you ever studied agriculture or went through that. Anybody studied agriculture? Francis, Chris, Brian, Martin, anybody? Any one of you who studied agriculture?
Well, I didn't, but at least at home we have a compost pit here. I just saw it today.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So we have one, and you know, been watching.
How much of it do you know?
Let's see. You see, it's the first time I'm doing it, but I mean, I watch. You know, I've watered it, and you know, I've covered it with a black paper just to make sure that the process goes on well. So I've been watching it every day. I mean, it's something that I learned through YouTube. Yeah.
Ah, that's nice.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. How long do you think it's going to take until you have good compost? A month? 3 months?
3 months,
6?
they say. So let's see how it goes. But in a month, it should be fine. But I think I didn't do some things right. So I'll give it 2 extra months. Let's see how it goes.
Okay, so I've been making compost myself,
okay,
and I've been really fascinated by reading about compost and, you know, how you can make it cook faster or make faster. I've been tempted to buy a machine that promises to make it quicker, but then I read a counter about it to see how much of a lie that is, because compost has to take its natural the natural process of degradation of, you know, whatever stuff you have put in there. So I've been trying to make compost, and I think as I make compost, of course there are several things that I learn along the way, and one of them is the idea that when you make compost, you have to learn to be patient, because it takes time. The proper process takes time. You cannot have shortcuts to the compost making process. There has to be, you know, there has to be the entire 1 month or the entire 3 months, or and sometimes it takes up to 6 months depending on what you put in there. So as I thought about our talk today and what I have been up to, I thought to myself that being a gentleman really comes from a soil that is planted deep within, and being a gentleman, really the results are what show from the outside. And if you think about compost, for example, compost is extremely rich, but if you look at the compost by itself, you're not going to get the wealth of it, you're not going to get the richness of it. It is what comes forth from the compost that you then look at and say, wow, that's a really healthy looking plant, or that's a really good plant, or maybe this is a plant that has not been attacked by different kinds of insects, because compost reduces the number of insects that attack a plant. At least that's what I've been reading. And I thought to myself, it is futile to tell anybody to be a gentleman if that's not coming from an inner part, an inner soil, an inner manure, if you like, an inner fertility, so that then what shows on the outside is as a result of what's on the inside, or in the inside, if you like. That doesn't sound very right. So as I make the compost, I am making compost to apply on the plants that I have in the compound, but I will only see the results of that compost when the eventual plants are out, because I am expecting that my flowers will be more beautiful. I'm expecting that the soils will be richer. I'm expecting they will retain water a lot more. I'm expecting really, really beautiful plants from it. And so this is the same thing with a gentleman. I think it is not right for us to think that being a gentleman is about opening doors for a lady. I think it is not right for us to think that being a gentleman is, about cleaning up after yourself only. Being a gentleman is about asking yourself, what is the soil that is coming from within that makes me see the reason to do the things that I need to exhibit on the outside. There's something about manure as well, or compost if you like, or really fertile soils. And the thing about fertile soils is that they do not discriminate. And I'm going to explain what I mean by they do not discriminate. Good soils also attract weeds. A good soil is not going to say this is weed. Well, this is weed sounds bad, but this is not an unwanted plant, and this is a food-based plant. Good soil doesn't do that. In other words, when you're a gentleman, you don't look at people and say this one deserves my gentleman behavior and this one doesn't. When you're a gentleman, it is who you are. You don't become a gentleman because somebody deserves it, so to say. You are a gentleman because that's what comes from within you. It is the right thing to choose to be. And so then the question is, can one learn how to be a gentleman? The way we make compost is made from different compartments, from different things. So I don't know what you have. What do you have in your compost, Pete? Tell me.
I have plants, mainly leaves, and then grass. You see, whenever we move the lawnmower, everything we get from that, we put it in the compost. And then out of that, we've also cut, we moved that to clear the garden. So most of those things, leaves, dead leaves, all those things have been going to the compost. So there's a lot of plants in there, and looking forward. Let's see how it goes. Pretty much.
Yes, it should turn out well. I really, really wish you well. So my one different. What I have in mind is, of course, all the waste food matter from the house, but I also got a bit of sawdust in there, and I also put a bit of goat manure in there. I put in sawdust and goat manure and the waste from the house, but I also discovered that you can put in paper, and cartons and paper that is not laminated, anything that doesn't have plastic, anything that can decompose can actually go in there. Then the thing about compost is that you will have to balance between what are called the greens and what are called the browns. So the greens would be like the grass that he's talking about, and the browns would be like the sawdust I'm talking about. The greens would be something like, if we have vegetables in the house, then I will get that. But the browns there has to be a really good balance between the greens and the browns. Let's apply that to what we're talking about here. By the time you're becoming a gentleman, you are a component of many things. You're a component of quite a bit of balance. And the balance that is there is that which comes from other sources that we have. There is a lot that we get from other people, but you will require a good balance and constant addition of nutrients so that you can have a proper balance or a proper product of the person that we're talking about here. When you think about a forest, for example, and the reasons that trees and forests have some of the best soils ever is because they are a natural process of a combination of things, the dead leaves and the biodegradation and things like that. And I think when you're a gentleman as well, this kind of soil that we're talking about, that it really comes from the inside here, you are a constant addition of nutrients. And for our context, where do these nutrients come from? these nutrients are coming from the mentoring sessions that you have. So every month, if you have a mentoring session, that's a nutrient that is being added to you to make you a really, really fertile, so to say, product, so that whatever you exude from you is coming from a fairly fertile place from within. So mentoring is one of those. But also parenting is one of those. When our parents tell us things, or the people that we look up to as parents, when they tell us things, that's part of adding nutrients to us. But we're also thinking about personal prayer and personal devotions, or if you like, personal recollections, when you have moments to spend reading spiritual material and thinking about spiritual matter. That's part of the nutrient that you're adding to yourself so that you can become a healthy source of gentlemanly behavior. And there's a lot of formation that goes on, whether you're thinking about formation through mentoring processes or whatever else it is. We are products of an addition of nutrients. But then also there's reading, and we're constantly reading and consistently reading material that again adds to these nutrients. So we need to get a hold of good books and books that have been recommended to us as being positively influential. You know, the opposite of these things is true, that when we take them away, or when we do not do these things, or when we do not have a positive influence and a positive addition of the nutrients, then certainly what is going to show off is to be far from gentlemanly behavior. So while we're talking about formation and personal prayer and reading and things like that as additions, we're also thinking about observing or watching and learning the things that we use with our senses. We observe things, we learn, we listen to things. This is also an addition to the nutrients that help us to become a gentleman. But at the same time, as I said, the opposite is also true. When we observe and watch and listen to things that do not add to the nutrient quality of us, then the product becomes a fairly weak source of nutrients, and of course a fairly weak gentleman for that matter. So really that's it about compost, but I hope I drive the point home. I wonder whether that's clear so far.
Yes, very clear. I guess if you don't mind, I think we can proceed, and then questions I'm sure will be coming as we move on.
Okay.
Unless
okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, no problem. No problem at all. So that's about good soil and the constant addition of nutrients. But then I'm wondering to myself, how do we then apply this? Because this sounds very theoretical. How do we apply this? How in your opinion, can we apply the ideas that we can pick from nature, in the sense that, you know, the addition of nutrients and the constant supervision of ourselves to ensure that we are only getting nutrients? We apply this. So I'm going to ask you a question. What, in your opinion, makes a gentleman? Can you come up with at least about 5 ideas? I noticed that we're very few, so we can't really get into groups or anything like that. But what, in your opinion, makes a gentleman? I'm happy to hear answers.
Personally, I think, first of all, kindness.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the others probably.
Good. Go ahead.
Let's see what the
Gentleness.
others.
Michael.
Gentleness.
Gentleness. That's good.
Francis.
Oh, sorry. I noticed there's actually quite a number of us. Sorry about that introduction. For some reason, my screen told me we were only 5. So that's why.
Yeah, no, we are 2.
That's why.
Okay.
That's why I thought. So maybe it might actually be easier for us to get into groups and see, can we come up with 5 things? We already know about kindness and gentleness. Can we come up with 5 things? If we could get into groups, that would be nice.
Okay. Let me just ask the rest.
I hope you're getting us into breakout sessions.
Yes. You prefer that you're in 5 groups, eh?
Yes, 5 groups. That's okay.
Okay. So, let me divide. So Abna, Andrew Manyuru, and Brian in one group, eh? So you just think of 5 and then write them to us. And then Chris.
Chris, pardon.
So I'm saying that you've heard the question. But
what is your
opinion?
Is,
yeah, write 5 things and then, 5 opinions and make a gentleman. So Abna, and then you write to me. You're in a group of, you're in the same group with Abna, Andrew, and Andrew Manyuru, Kigondu, and Brian. So you guys can discuss if you want. And then Chris, Eugene, Mogesa, Eugene Odhiambo. Same question, and then you write to me. And then Francis Allen. Francis Allen, Gabriel, Giovanni Wonye, and Martin Duarte. Same question, and then you write to me, please. And then Alo, Magu, Michael Muidiga. Same question, and then you write to me. Sorry. Then going back, the last group is Moses, Robert Otieno, Robert Omugo, and Ryan Maina. Just 5 ideas, your own opinion of what makes a gentleman. And James Kiume as well. And then you write to me. Please, let's make it quick, guys. Thank you.
So I think we can give people about 3 or so minutes.
Yeah, let's give them 2 minutes and then we get back.
Okay.
Yeah. Make it quick, guys. Just send them to me.
I think we can run with what people have.
Sure, sure. Do you mind if I read them to you, Dr. Beatrice?
No, I don't mind at all.
So one, Eugene is saying a gentleman should be considerate, and then should take care of his physical appearance and style, should be humble, courteous, and respectful. Someone else is saying that there needs to be a balance. A gentleman should balance his needs with the needs of other people. And then someone else says a gentleman should be polite, well-mannered, and considerate. And then someone else say gratitude, kindness, and patience. And then someone else is saying also he's not sure, but wisdom. Whether wisdom is the right word, but he thinks that part of what makes a gentleman is knowing when and how to act and speak. For example, when to correct someone, what words to use to ensure that they don't feel foolish, and how to approach them so that they don't seem to be attacking or discriminating them. And then peaceful, somebody is saying, patience also is coming up. Then strength, leadership, and also being a team player. And then magnanimity.
Wow, that's a good word.
Yeah, and then somebody is saying perseverance, and not to care much about what other people think about one. And then also initiative, common sense, and industriousness.
I like that bit of common sense. But you know the way people say common sense. You know the way people say common sense is not so common.
Yeah. Yeah, and then someone else is saying also that a gentleman should know how to treat women right. And then self-control also is coming up, and gentleness. I think that's pretty much, Dr. Beatrice.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. And those are pretty good and fairly accurate ideas, and we will be open to discussing a few of them. I want to share with us 2 videos that are just going to add to a few more words here, and then we can have a nice conclusion and see, so what are these skills that we're talking about? Some of them have come up pretty well, but one of the things then you will hear, if I were to give you a spoiler alert, is, as we said in the beginning, being a gentleman cannot come from the top. It has to come from a soil that is fertile from the inside, because then that's what causes you to a lot here when
Please be more audible.
Oh, did you? Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yes, that's better.
Okay, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. One of the things that then we said at the beginning is that you cannot be a gentleman from nowhere. Being a gentleman comes from within. It is from within that we will from the outside, and we're doing well by this idea of being a gentleman behavior, because that is what we exhibit. It's what we see. You know, when Christ said, "You will know them by their fruit," the fruit is now then not in sight, but it is what is inside the tree. The quality of the tree is what will cause the fruit to be fairly good. So I want to share a video, actually 2 short videos. One we'll only watch for a few minutes, and then the other one will be about 2 minutes. Then we'll watch all of it. And then we can add to a few more words and ask ourselves, what have we heard a gentleman is all about? So let me just share this. We'll start from being a gentleman. And let's share computer sound. Please let me know if you can hear it.
Yes, perfect.
Perfect?
Yeah,
Good.
we can see now. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, let me just expand it. I've put in captions because especially the gentleman that we'll listen to, he's got a fairly heavy French accent, just to help us understand it better.
Oh.
But this one should be okay. Uh-oh.
Being a gentleman is a little bit, actually probably a whole lot different than it was, say 100 years ago. The main difference, I believe, is just a will to do the right thing is a way to describe a gentleman from 100 years ago. I think with the gentleman's handshake, with the gentleman's agreement, honor codes in school, there was a will to do the right thing. And that was a very integral part about being a gentleman. Today, it's more about how you dress, whether you open the door for a lady, or perhaps whether you take turns in a conversation. Very basic ideas of what a gentleman means compared to what it was a century ago. For me, a gentleman is somebody who wants to present himself well, but in an honest way, and in a way that he's not afraid to show his idiosyncrasies. Maybe he likes vintage. Maybe he likes strange glasses. You know, maybe he prefers a bow tie. I mean, and if he does, having the courage to present himself that way as he is. And so that's one part of it. And then the next part is returning to that desire to do the right thing in everything that he does. So that fusion of how you present yourself and how you behave, to me, is what a gentleman is in these days. If you think about someone you know that's just the opposite of someone who serves, someone who is so proud of the way he looks that he is constantly displaying himself to the point where no one else is included. He's constantly looking for those likes, those hearts, those thumbs up, but he's not giving them back to other people. Now, this is a very shallow way to approach the subject. He's not serving others, he's taking. So I think that there's a void in this business, and there's a danger in getting lost too much in yourself, the people. Well, say you're broke.
Okay. So for that one, we'll watch only up to there. But I think she says a few things which are really, sorry about that. Stop share. Okay. So I think she says some things that we didn't bring. Was that you'd like to point out?
Well, personally, I think I like the idea of, you know, giving back. You know, you you're given a thumbs up, you also, appreciate the other people. And then also the idea of being oneself, probably. If I like a bow tie, I put on a bow tie. Not being ashamed of who we are. I found it interesting. I don't know what the others think.
Let's see what Michael thinks. Yes, Michael?
What I got was the will to better gentleman is someone who has the will to do good. And that he's not someone who is just trying to
Sorry,
body,
Michael, we can't hear you very clearly.
but do what is objectively good.
Sorry, Mike, we can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
No, now not. Just try again. Mike?
Let me type it out.
No. Just do it the way you've done now. We can hear you now.
Obviously, let me just type it out in the chat.
No, but we can hear you now, if you want, eh?
Oh.
Just by raising your voice, it's working out.
So, I was saying,
yes,
what I got,
Yes.
all the subjective ideas.
Yeah.
But to do what is objectively good,
yeah.
And by doing that, he's being a gentleman.
Oh, okay.
Okay, to do that which is objective good, that's a good point.
Yeah.
She's very keen to talk about the fact that what we're exposed to as gentlemanly behavior today could actually be quite shallow, because if you're just looking at the way somebody saying that's a gentleman, then that's very shallow, which again takes us back to that first point. It is that which is abundant within you that causes you to behave in ways that can then be described as a gentleman. We're going to watch a second video. It's also not very long, but then that will help us tie our ideas together and sort of bring this to a close. So this is from Hugo, a French, I think he's a French producer, but he wears many hats, but I think he says something quite nice based on the French culture.
Starting out with any new project management software usually feels something like this. Where do you even start?
Sorry, I had downloaded them earlier.
Oh, okay.
That's a good question. What is a gentleman? There's not one answer to this question, but several. It depends if you speak from a historical point of view, if you speak from a dictionary point of view, or if you speak more from a modern, I would say even marketing. Let's go a little bit backwards in history, and let's go back before the French Revolution. We are in the 17th century, and a gentleman is coming from the French gentilhomme. Gentilhomme in French had a very, very precise meaning. A gentilhomme was a legitimate noble. That is to say, a noble that was noble by blood and by descendants, and not by decree of a king. Because, you know, the king had the right to say to somebody, because of your good action or because of your good service to the crown, I make you a duke, or I make you a noble. The person who were given the title, the noble title by the king, was not even allowed to use the word gentilhomme, gentleman. It was only people that were noble by blood. But the funny thing about that is that his offsprings, if he had daughters and sons, they were able to catch and to be granted the term gentilhomme. So it's a little bit awkward, but that's the historical explanation. So many people ask me, why you're a French style writer, why do you use in your title an English word like gentleman, Parisian gentleman? Just because if I would have translated this in French like le gentilhomme parisien, it would have no meaning because the word gentilhomme is totally dead. It's not used anymore because I remind you that we did the French Revolution in 1798, and since that time the word gentilhomme has totally disappeared. Then you have the dictionary definition. French dictionary describe a gentleman as a person with a certain elegance, a delicate person in his manners, in his attitude, in his way of behaving with others, but also in the generosity of his attitude. So this is a definition that I like because it's something that is very at the heart of what we try to focus on Parisian. And this kindness, this ability of having the right gesture, attitude, no matter the occasion, is for me the key definition. But the problem is when the blogosphere, when the people like me and a few others on the planet, we use this word to requalify the people who wanted to dress well, who wanted to be careful about their own style, who wanted to, step out of the crowd by coming back to some basic elegance, wearing a tie, a pocket square, a three-piece suit, being interested in the bespoke world. So this word has been caught by many, many, many companies, and now everybody is speaking about the return of the gentleman, or the modern gentleman, or unleash the gentleman that is sleeping inside yourself, etc., etc. And in my opinion, there's something that is wrong about this overuse of the word. You know that when we use a word too much, it has a tendency of emptying itself of its meaning. And so now many people just understand the word gentleman as somebody who is dressing well. But it's not the case. Let's take an example. You can have the best dressed man in the world. You can have people who are wearing expensive clothes, beautifully cut. But if these people behave like uneducated people, behave like selfish people, behave like even tacky people, the definition of the gentleman is immediately wrong for these kind of people. So the modern sense of the word is, in my opinion, a little bit misused and totally going away from its real roots.
Very interesting.
Okay, so I'll only allow us to watch that quote just a little, because then you can watch that video by yourself a little later. It's an interesting quote that he has.
Is a matter of chance. Well, you could have a quote that I really like, which explains the whole subject. It says, being a boy is a matter of chance. Well, you could have been a girl. Being a man is a matter of age. But being a gentleman is a matter of choice.
Okay, so what do you hear from Hugo? Anybody? What do you hear from Hugo? He says quite a number of things, and it would be nice if you watched that video when you have some extra time to really listen to some points that he gives. What do you hear? Mark? Okay, see Mark is connecting to audio. Anybody? Andrew, James, Robert, what do you hear? Ryan?
Michael, hello.
What I heard was that being a gentleman is a matter, is being delicate with your actions, is being delicate with the emotions, and having a behavior. Yeah.
That's good. Did you hear any what it is about being having good behavior toward women?
No, I didn't hear that.
Good. Why? Because being a gentleman is behavior towards human beings rather than women. And I know lots and lots of people keep saying that it is about opening doors for women. It is about, behaving in a certain way for women, or doing things for women, or looking for approval from women in a certain, because you've behaved in a certain way. But really that's quite misleading, so to say, because when you're a gentleman, you're choosing a behavior that is right because that's the right thing to do. That's the right attitude to have towards your fellow human beings. And so we're not talking about here to have it for women, or we're not talking about here to have it for girls for that matter. So there are many things that people have said, but I think we can really summarize them and tabulate them in this way. Let me just summarize and tabulate them. Having a few challenges here with the net. We can summarize and tabulate, and I know this looks quite busy, but we're going to start from up here. For our purposes, remember we said in the beginning that it has to come from somewhere, and so a gentleman is a godly man, and for us we include the word godly, because the character of being godly, because it is that which will then give you a purpose, a stronger purpose for doing some of the things that you do. It gives you a proper basis. It gives you a foundation, because if you don't have a foundation, you're going to get very tired of opening doors, very tired of ushering people in and letting them go first. You've got to have a purpose, something that pushes you to do these things. So godliness is key. And of course, we talked about calmness, and one of them talked about calmness, maybe in a different setup, but I know it's also an idea that came up when you were sharing. But let's talk about calmness insofar as what I observe is concerned. When you're a gentleman, there are certain situations you get into that really are against your expectation, or that cause you to be upset. I notice increasingly people like to click, because you're so upset and you're so annoyed about what happened. And sometimes you brush your hands, you throw your hands in the air. I think being a gentleman then, if it is coming from within, then you ought to realize that when you're calm, you have a better mind to deal with the situation at hand. And then, of course, we heard about being firm in decision making. When you're a firm person in decision making, you're really weighing the options that you have, and you're not easily influenced by the crowd. The crowd is going west, so we all go west. The crowd is going east, we all go east. You're a good listener, you listen in, but you also have that ability to make a decision and ask yourself, what is the right thing to do for me? What is good over here? But you also exercise self-control over yourself. Self-control here, and this looks like a repetitive word, but when you have self-control, it means you don't let your emotion overcome you, and that you're really sober and on top of things. You don't let excitement get over you. I have seen stories of teenagers who were caught in the ditch because they got so drunk they couldn't take themselves home. Maybe they were given that one opportunity, but they forgot to take control over themselves, and they let go. And when you let go, you're in the ditch, you're drunk. How to describe you as a gentleman? That cannot be a gentleman. But a gentleman also reasons. Somebody said their common sense, and it really is that you reason and you see what is the right thing here to do, what is the appropriate thing here to do, what does common sense demand in a situation like this, despite what everybody else is talking about. And then, of course, there is the idea of kindness and humility. Notice here we're talking about kindness as that which is coming from within you to be good to another human being, that which is demanding from within you to not be arrogant, or to not be proud, or to not think yourself more highly than you ought to think of yourself, or to think of yourself, you know, my gentleman takes things with humility. So when a compliment is given to you, you take it with humility, you say thank you, and you move on to it. And you can return a compliment as well. A gentleman cultivates inner strength. And when we talk about inner strength here, you're thinking about remaining sobriety as you make decisions. We're also thinking about wisdom. Somebody said they're not sure whether the word is wisdom, but it is wisdom, because wisdom helps you to determine what the right thing to be would be. And you know, wisdom goes beyond academic knowledge. You cannot be taught wisdom. Wisdom is a gift, and God gives us wisdom. And this is example of critiquing the person. Critiquing the person would be calling the person a name. You know, you would be saying, is this the best that you could think of? You know, is this the best that you can produce? But when you're critiquing an opinion, you're saying, I see where you're coming from. However, if we did this and this and this, it might give us a different result. When you're a gentleman, you respect people's opinion, even if they don't agree with yours. I think when you're a gentleman, you also are deliberate about your appearance. You're not obsessed, because then when you're obsessed, that's what is called vanity. You're vain. You're not obsessed about your appearance, but you're conscious of good etiquette. You're conscious that you need to keep your nails trim. You're conscious that you need to keep your hair well groomed. You're conscious that you need to smell good. You're conscious that you need to take care of your, you know, your cleanliness, your body. It is your vessel that you need to keep it clean and habitable, not just for other people, but also for yourself. That's being a gentleman. But I think one other thing that a gentleman does is that they cultivate good communication. That means you learn how to express yourself with clarity. When you want to do something, when you want to say something, you learn to be clear. And when you're not clear, when other people ask you to repeat what you have said, then you do that. You have good body language. You have good eye contact. A gentleman has good eye contact. You don't talk to people as you look at the roof or as you look at everywhere else. You look at people and appreciate people with your eye contact. And then, of course, you use good language. There is the small matter of swear words that we get from the movies and swear words that sound right. But the question is, when you're punctuating your language with swear words, still call you a gentleman? Do you still qualify for kindness and gentleness and wisdom and reason? Clean language. And I think on this table, the last bit is that when you're a gentleman, you're aware that there is good and that there is bad, and that you stand for what is good and acknowledge what is good with confidence. Now, I know some of you, of course, are living at home, and I want us to ask ourselves, can we be gentlemen at home? Let me just give you a few ideas here. As I said, it's coming from within and then showing from the outside. And I think just the cleanliness is what will show from the outside, because you appreciate that even if you have the toilet to yourself, the toilet is not outside by itself, it is within a home and it needs to be clean. So small things, and I think these are the smaller things here. Cleaning up after yourself, cleaning up your room. There's a book by Jordan Peterson. and it's called The 12 Rules for Life, and I would recommend that you read it. It's a bit philosophical, but it's a good book. And one of the rules in there is that you have to clean up your room, because it is cleaning up your room and your environment that helps you to reason clearly, to think clearly. And then if you can clean up your room, because it's such a small responsibility, then you're ready to receive a bigger responsibility. If you can clean up a small place like your room, then you can manage people, then you can lead an organization, then you can be a prefect, then, things like that. So clean up your room and start there, something that you have control over. But another idea is when mom comes from the grocery, your dad comes from the grocery, pick up the groceries from the car. Don't wait to be told to open the gate, or maybe you're in the middle of a game. A gentleman takes initiative. Pick up the groceries from the car. Don't wait to be told. But there's an idea about gentlemen that tends to be quite protective around the home. You protect the equipment at home because you know the value. You protect the doors, therefore you don't bang the doors. You protect the tools, therefore when you use them, you return where they're supposed to be. All of these things that help us to protect the equipment are part of what would cause us to be described as gentlemen. And this is a bit of a mouthful. I'm just going to read it. Learn a skill or invent a method of doing something that will help around the house. Maybe it's joinery, maybe it's repairs. Maybe you need to prune some flowers that are out there. Maybe it's, you need to clean your cars thoroughly, or plant some vegetables in sacks, or do flowers at the front of the house. And here the idea is, gentlemen, that you need to be handy, because one description of a gentleman is somebody who is handy, somebody who is useful around the home, somebody who is useful with their hands. And here we're not even talking about academics here. We're talking about somebody who is good for something. They're using their hands and they're helpful around the house. Express yourself clearly. I think we've talked about that. Confidently and politely. When your parents ask you things and then you go to your room mumbling things, it's not very helpful. It hasn't helped yourself, and it hasn't helped her know what's going on. So when you're a gentleman, you learn how to express yourself clearly and confidently, and of course politely. Take initiative to do the right thing. The small matter of girls here, I must say as I bring this to a close, is that we need to treat girls with respect. In fact, if you read your Bible, it will tell you that you need to learn how to treat girls like your sisters, even when you're under pressure. I told you I have a teenage boy, and sometimes when I want to upset him, usually I ask him, so what's going on? Why are you using your phone on your own? How come you don't want me to see what's going on? Of course, he gets very upset and he tells me, Mom. Then I tell him, no, just let me know what's going on. And then he tells me, Mom, I know you want to know whether I'm talking to a girl. Number one, I am not talking to a girl. Number two, even if I was talking to a girl, you have taught me not to fall for pressure. And the way these girls have pressure these days, I am not going to talk to a girl under pressure. And he, of course, I'm sure he tells me that so that I can shut up. But I always remind him that it's a good thing to treat not just, everybody, not just girls and human beings here, but we're especially talking about girls because these are the people that we are with and we will encounter as we grow up. Treat girls with respect. And when you treat them with respect, you learn how to look at them as human beings rather than as objects, okay? Even under pressure, remember a gentleman is the one that will be described as one who will treat other people with respect. So what's the conclusion? The conclusion is that you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice to have an appropriate disposition or appropriate nature or an appropriate character to be a good quality man. Whenever you're tempted to do things described as a gentleman based on what I have done. Thank you. Unmute, we can't hear you.
I'm saying 2 questions have been sent to me. If you don't mind, I can ask them and then we can call it a day. I don't know whether you have a bit of time.
No, of course, go ahead.
Okay. So one question somebody is saying that you talked about learning and observing. So that means we need to have role models. And what ideas can you give us to choose the right role models?
The quick answer to that would be, are there people within the family that you really admire? Okay. Are there people who are friends of the family that you really admire? Are there people, even if you don't necessarily admire them, can you ask them to recommend people that you can observe? Maybe these are people who are a bit far from us, but you could ask for recommendations, because then when we find people we admire, we tend to follow them on social media, for example, or we will listen to them a lot more, or we will read what they have written and things like that. It's a good thing to surround yourself with people that you can learn from. Probably there's an uncle that you look at and you think, wow, you know, he's got his life together. Maybe there's a cousin who is way older than you and you're thinking, wow, you know, his life is turning out well. But sometimes parents are also very resourceful, because, you know, as parents, they're boys that we look at who are much older and we think, wow, if my son would turn out to be like this. So if you could ask your parent whether there are people you feel they can learn from, then they would be quite happy to make recommendations for you.
Interesting. And then the next question is, you talked about a personal recollection, and then just to somebody's saying, would you call mindfulness that has become so fashionable nowadays, would you call that personal recollection? And what do you have in mind when you talk about personal recollection?
Okay. When I talked about recollection, I was thinking about moments that are set apart and that are guided sometimes by a spiritual guide, or you know, or a spiritual leader who leads us through quiet moments of reflection about our lives, for example. Because oftentimes, you know, life is interesting, and if you just go from one day to another without really looking back and asking yourself, does my life count for something? What do I want it to count for? By the time I reach 30, by the time I reach 20. So when you have moments of personal recollection, you could have a book, or you could have a spiritual guide. And these are people who will help you by asking you hard questions, you know, like, what have you been up to? What are you doing with yourself that is not good? What are you going to do to change? So when you have moments like that, they're always very helpful, because then they keep you in check.
Wow, thank you very much. And then, if you don't mind, just one that has just come up. You say, you know, in the current world, there is always, you know, that, the quick results. So more often than not, you say, young people ask themselves, if I study, I get a job. If I become a gentleman, what's again? Is it good relationship? Is it, or is there some, could you explain, please?
Good. Now, if you remember at the beginning, and that's a brilliant question, as they all are. If you remember at the beginning, we talked about cultivating something that is within you that causes you to behave in a certain way, okay? So that which is within you is what you're cultivating, but you're not cultivating so that other people can see or can recommend, or so that you can get a good wife or anything like that. You're making this choice because it is the right thing to do, because it is the right way to go. When it is the right thing to do, then you don't have to expect compliments for it. And even when they don't come, you will tell yourself, it was the right thing to do. I chose good. And when you choose good, then of course you will live a much more fulfilled life. Okay.
Wow. Thank you very much, Dr. Beatrice. It's really good.
Can I answer 2 questions that I see on chat?
Sure, please.
Okay, so there's a question currently there. I will not say the names because it's been sent to me privately. Currently, there has been a fine line between being a gentleman and being a person who puts others before themselves, or what is known as a simp. should there be a line drawn to the amount of kindness and generosity that we give? And if there is, when should it be put out? And that's a very deep question. Again, the idea of being a simp here maybe is a little different because when you're a simp, you're a simpleton. You don't have the capacity to choose good and to, you know, to wisely apply yourself. My opinion would be, when you choose to be a gentleman, you're choosing that which is the right thing to do. And therefore, there is no question of, have I been too good? Have I been too wise? Have I been too kind? So the question of whether, when do I stop being, you know, a gentleman wouldn't arise, because then you cannot be too gentlemanly. In fact, the challenge would be, can you add more to your character so that you keep molding yourself to be the gentleman that you would like to be? The second question I see is that isn't a gentleman being about treating women right? And as we said here, it is about treating human beings right, and women are part of human beings. But so I wonder how gentlemanly you would be when, say, Andrew is very unkind to Michael, but then when Caro shows up, he's all nice and all gentle. And all you can't be. Being a gentleman is a character, you know, and it is the right thing to choose to be for human beings. Are the ones who are recipients of your character.
Wow. So thank you very much, Dr. Beatrice, once again. We really appreciate your time here with us, and we'll for sure organize further meetings to expound more on this topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the time, and I really appreciate the invitation.
Thanks a lot. So see you soon.